The auction catalog called it Lot 47, a Victorian cheval mirror, silvered plate, oak frame, circa 1880. The photograph dimmed its true height. In person, the mirror stood like a door yearning to be opened. The wood had a dark reddish sheen, carved in a pattern of ivy and small open mouths that might have been blossoms and might have been something else. Nora Vale hadn't planned to buy anything. She'd gone to the old hotel ballroom with a friend and the casual armor of a journalist off-duty. She took notes because she always did. The soft scrape of paddles, the dusty chandeliers, the way the auctioneer pronounced provenance, as if it could keep the past from leaking. When Lot 47 rolled onto the little stage, the room shifted. People sat up as if a chill had tested their spines. The glass didn't reflect the way glass should. It seemed a fraction slow, as if whatever stared back had to climb stairs to reach you. From the Harrow estate, the auctioneer said lightly, stored since the 1930s, recently recovered from a sealed attic. Will someone start me at 200? The number left Nora's mouth before she understood her own voice. 200. Her friend Elise shot her a look. You don't even like antiques. But Nora had the feeling she'd seen this mirror before. As a child, in a fever dream. As a smudge at the edge of a photograph. As a shape waiting at the end of a hallway she never dared to walk. 300, someone else called. 4, Nora heard herself say. The paddles rose and fell like wings. At 800, the room seemed to decide the mirror wasn't worth this much trouble. At 900, the auctioneer's gavel came down with a little laugh. Sold to bidder 73. Nora lowered her paddle. The ballroom exhaled. In the mirror, her reflection blinked an instant after she did. And then, very slightly, smiled. She hadn't smiled. Nora lived on the 3rd floor of a brick building that used to be a glove factory. The hallway smelled like old starch and neighbor's soup. Room 313 had high ceilings, tall windows, and a habit of making her think she heard footsteps when no one walked. The delivery men wheeled the mirror in around noon. It barely fit through the door. She signed for it, because that's what you do when a decision has already made you. They asked where she wanted it, and she almost said back, but her mouth said, there, by the wall, opposite the bed. When the door shut, the apartment grew 2 degrees colder. Alone with it, she studied the frame. The carver had been precise. Ivy leaves so thin their veins showed, berries polished to little moons, and those open mouths again, petals or teeth. Where the silver met the frame, the edge wasn't smooth. It puckered as if the glass had been poured over something living. She stood before it and met herself. Reporters learned to hold their faces as tools. She could make soft or hard, listening or unsympathetic. In the mirror, she looked like a woman who had not slept enough. The apartment pooled behind her. A couch, 2 stacks of books, a fern she was trying not to kill. All as it should be. Then the lights buzzed. The glass darkened, just slightly, as if a cloud had passed between her and her reflection. The fern behind her moved, leaves shifting in a draft the room didn't have. The couch's throw rolled a quarter turn. Nora turned. Nothing had moved. No draft, no open window. The fern stood patiently photosynthesizing. She faced the mirror again and saw, just for a fraction, the reflection still turning back from the couch, a half-second late. When it faced her fully, its mouth had the smallest crook at one corner. A little too pleased. She looked down at her phone to steady herself. When she looked up, the reflection was perfectly ordinary. Tired woman, messy bun, stubborn fern. Okay, she said aloud, because talking makes a room behave. We're not doing this. At dusk, she made tea and tried not to look. By midnight, she had looked too much. The mirror filled the apartment like a presence you invite and instantly regret. She fell asleep on the couch with the television murmuring, a trick she'd learned at 12 to keep the dark from inventing its own voices. At 3:13 a.m., the television turned off. The room went black and then dark in a way that felt decided. Nora's eyes opened to the sound of glass warming, a microscopic tick-tick like a cooling engine. She sat up. The mirror was no longer across from the bed. It stood where she had not put it, pivoted slightly, as if someone had hoped to give her a better view. In the glass, the apartment looked exactly the same, except for the doorway. The reflected doorway was open onto a hallway Nora did not have. She did the cowardly, sensible thing first. She pulled a blanket over her head and waited for dawn. When it came, pale and embarrassed, the mirror stood exactly where the delivery men had left it. Room, ordinary. Doorway, her doorway. Hallway, not hallway gone. Elise texted at 8. So, you bought a vampire mirror? Brunch? Nora wrote back 10, because routine is ballast. At brunch, Elise listened with the skeptical tenderness of a friend who remembered Nora at 16. Eyes wide, running toward every story that sounded like sirens. It's a trick of light, Elise said. Old glass, wavy silver, your brain doing that pattern completion thing. Also, you sleep like a corpse with the TV on, which can't help. I know. Nora poked her eggs. I know what the sensible answer is. It's just, there was a hallway. Okay, so don't stare at it at 3 a.m. Move it. I tried to move it. She hadn't, but now that she said it, it felt true. It's heavy. I'll come by later, Elise said, already deciding. We'll put it somewhere it can't be weird at you. They hauled it to the corner by the bookshelf, far from the bed. They put felt pads under its feet. Elise made a joke about warding it with coasters. They laughed. They drank more coffee than necessary. Call your therapist before you call a priest, Elise said at the door. I don't have a therapist. Right, Elise said. Call mine. That night, Nora did all the right things. Went to the gym, ate something that wasn't a cracker, took a shower hot enough to fog the bathroom mirror into softness. When she wiped a circle clear, her face looked like a foreign country. She said, "You're fine," to the woman in the fog. At 3:13 a.m., she woke from nowhere. The apartment made a sound like a sigh being cleaned. She sat up. The mirror stood obediently by the bookshelf, but the angle of it suggested a kind of attention. In the glass, the apartment reflected sofa, fern, door, except the door was open onto that hall again, narrow, wallpapered in pale flowers, carpet runner worn to threads. At the far end, a window let in a smear of gray light. Something hung on the wall, a portrait, a sconce, a shape. Nora stood. Her reflection stood a half-second later. She lifted her right hand. The reflection lifted its left, and then corrected, as if embarrassed. Nora steps toward the mirror. In the glass, the hall sharpened. The flowers on the wallpaper were not flowers at all, but eyes. Each pale bloom had a center black as bitten fruit. She reached for the frame to pivot it away, like a parent turning a child from a window. Her fingers found the wood. It was warm, almost feverish. The hall in the mirror grew brighter. A shadow moved at the far end, something the size and posture of a person who has yet to remember how to be one. The shadow paused, tilted its head, and then started walking toward her. Not fast, as if it had all the time it needed. Nora jerked back. The mirror tilted forward a fraction, the way a person leans when they don't want to be left out. The shadow stopped. It lifted one hand, a woman's hand, pale, long-fingered, and pressed it to the inside of the glass. The ivy-carved frame creaked as if a door had leaned against it. Nora could see the little crescent moon of a scar at the base of the thumb. She had the same scar. She'd cut herself at 12 on a broken bottle behind a church. The hand inside the mirror rotated, showing the crescent just where hers would be. "Hello," said her own voice from the hall. It was not an echo. Nora ran to the kitchen and turned every light on. When she came back, the mirror showed only Nora, small, wide-eyed, a woman who had decided, without deciding, to sleep with the lamp on. The next morning, an envelope lay on the doormat. No stamp, no return address. The paper felt old in the way library books do, handled by careful fingers. Inside, a single sheet, typed on a real typewriter. Black letters, a little haunted by their own shadows. Rules for Lot 47. Do not move it after sunset. Do not cover it. Do not let it see itself. Never stand between it and a doorway. If it shows you a hallway, do not go in. If something knocks from the other side, do not answer. If it calls your name, wait. The mirror gets names wrong at first. If it gets your name right, leave the room. If it shows you a second you regret, do not reach for it. If it shows you her, say, "I remember," and keep the lights on. At the bottom, a line in ballpoint blue. I tried to sell it back. They wouldn't take it. E.H. E.H. Nora turned the initials over. Eleanor Harrow, Edward, Elise. The auction listing had said Harrow Estate. Elise's last name was Green. Nora's aunt had been Evelyn, but she looked up so fast her neck pocked. In the mirror, her reflection lifted her head a moment after she did, wincing with a beat's delay. "You're not me," Nora said, and felt foolish and correct. The reflection smiled with her mouth, but not the way her mouth smiled. "No," it said pleasantly. "I'm the version of you that looked when you shouldn't." The apartment swallowed the sentence. Arguments with glass make neighbors nervous. Nora whispered, "What do you want?" "To come through," her reflection said, as if discussing brunch. "Or for you to come in. It amounts to the same in the long run." Nora folded the rules and slid them under the ferns pot because she needed them grounded by dirt. She showered, dressed, went to work, wrote 2 paragraphs of a story about a broken pedestrian bridge, and stared through her editor for a full minute when he asked about the nut graph. She lied to Elise about sleep and listened to 3 voicemails from her mother without answering. Because that night she set her phone alarm for 3:10 a.m. and sat in the kitchen with all the lights on, a cup of coffee going cold, and the rules folded under a magnet on the refrigerator. At 3:13, the apartment exhaled. The lights dimmed as if the building had blinked. From the bedroom, she heard a soft, distinct sound. A knock. 3 knuckles, bare, polite, waited too long in the hallway, kind of knock. Nora's mouth shaped no, and found it stuck to her teeth. The rules on the fridge trembled in the air from the hum of the motor. If something knocks from the other side, do not answer. The knock came again. Then a voice, tight with the patience of someone trying to be heard through a hotel door. "Nora," it said, using her mother's voice exactly. "Let me in." Her hand closed around the kitchen counter until her fingers hurt. Her mother lived 400 miles away and was very much alive and very fond of voicemail. The voice came again, perfectly measured, the softness before the scold. "Nora, please." She covered her ears and whispered. I remember, because it was the only instruction that sounded like a prayer. She said it again and again, until the voice on the other side said, in her own voice this time, "Fine, I'll wait." Something like breath fogged the mirror. When it cleared, a message had written itself with a fingertip from the other side. Letters too clean. "Lights off, please." She left the lights on until dawn and slept with her shoes on, because that is a kind of readiness humans have always mistaken for safety. On the 4th day, Nora brought the mirror a gift. It was either lunacy or journalism. She set her old film camera on a tripod and pointed it at the glass. She loaded black and white stock and set the timer for a frame every 30 seconds from midnight to 4. Elise came over and complained about this plan in the specific tone reserved for friends. "You want footage of yourself staring at yourself." "I want proof that the reflection moves out of sync," Nora said, knowing how unconvincing she sounded. "Or proof that I'm making it up. One is as good as the other." They ate noodles, talked about stories that weren't haunted, and ignored the mirror with the fervor of 3-year-olds refusing to see broccoli. Elise left at 11 with a hug that said, "Call me even if you won't." At midnight, Nora pressed start. The camera began to click, discreet as a watch. In the mirror, the apartment behaved like a waiting room. At 1:06, the glass darkened a shade. At 1:07, the hallway appeared behind her again. Pale wallpaper, threadbare runner, window like a weak eye. A picture frame on the far wall brightened. At 1:08, the picture in the frame resolved. Nora, at 16, hair hacked short in the bathroom, eyeliner, an act of war. She stood with her arm around someone the camera had never seen, the someone she never mentioned to Elise or anyone else from that year. The person she had left, the person who had left her, both are true. The mirror is a liar. It shows you the truth. "Stop," Nora said. "Not that." The reflection smiled with bad sympathy. "Rule 9, it murmured. "If it shows you a second you regret, do not reach for it." The 16-year-old in the frame lifted a hand, waved at the older woman in the apartment, and then mouthed a word the camera could not hear. Nora leaned forward before she knew she had moved. Her hand rose, her finger stretched for the cool of the glass, the way a body reaches to test bathwater. The apartment's electricity browned, as if someone had leaned on the building. The camera's motor whined. Her hand touched the mirror and did not meet resistance. It went through, only up to the first knuckles. The glass gave like skin. On the other side, the hallway's air was colder than any winter. she felt a second hand reach from the hall and take hers, familiar in its shape and weight and angle, and tug, gently, with the promise nothing terrible would happen if she just took one step. Behind her, the apartment held its breath. Near her ear, in her voice, but not, the mirror said, "Come see what you were before you decided to be this." Nora bit the inside of her cheek hard enough to taste iron. She pulled her hand back. The glass closed like lips. She stumbled, hit the edge of the couch, and sat like a child who has just nearly gone into the street. The camera clicked on. The hallway funneled into shadow. The picture frame on the far wall went blank as if an eye had shut. From somewhere very near and very far, something knocked, politely, a third time. Nora laughed once, thin, ugly, and said to the empty room, "Not tonight." In the mirror, her reflection said, not unkindly, "We have time." Nora didn't go into work the next day. She called in sick, or rather, she called in haunted, though she didn't use that word. Instead, she went to the city archives, where old newspapers were stored like fossils in cabinets. If she was going to understand Lot 47, she needed to know where it came from. The Harrow estate was easy to trace. The house had once belonged to Dr. Charles Harrow, a physician and occultist who'd vanished in 1893. His experiments, whispered about in the press, involved mirrors, memory, and what he called the reflective twin of time. His death had been presumed, but no body was found. Only rumors, strange lights, voices behind glass, patients who walked into mirrors and never returned. More disturbing were the clippings from 1901. 5 vanish in Harrow House. Police baffled after servants disappear during dinner. Only a shattered mirror found at the scene. Estate sealed by order of the Crown. Authorities cite hazardous structural conditions. Hazardous conditions, Nora snorted. That was one way to describe a house that ate people. But the last clipping froze her blood. It was from 1932, decades later. Local girl claims mirror stole my sister, and a 9-year-old named Elise Harrow reported that her older sister vanished while playing near the sealed study mirror. Authorities found only fingerprints on the inside of the glass. Elise was placed in care. The mirror was locked in the attic. Elise Harrow. The initials on the rules, E.H., weren't a coincidence. The mirror had been taking people for more than a century, and now it had her name. That night, Nora taped the list of rules to the wall above her bed. She repeated them like prayers. She kept every light on, left the TV playing, even sprinkled salt across the threshold. A ritual she didn't believe in, but did anyway. At 3:13 a.m., the apartment sighed. This time, the mirror didn't show a hallway. It showed a room, a child's room. Wooden toys on a faded rug. A rocking horse with chipped paint. On the wall, a painting of 2 girls holding hands. And in the middle of the room, a little girl with dark braids sat with her back to the mirror, humming a song from a century ago. "Elise?" Nora whispered. The girl turned. Her face was pale, her eyes deep wells of sorrow. She smiled faintly, as if she'd been waiting all this time. "You remembered," she said softly. "Are you Elise Harrow?" Nora asked. The girl tilted her head. "That's one of my names." "One?" The girl pointed to the walls. Names were scratched into the plaster, hundreds of them, all different, all carved by hand. Some were old and weathered, some were new. Nora stepped closer. Her breath caught when she saw her own name carved at the very top. Nora Vale, already there, though she had never written it. "How?" she started. "You don't write them," Elise said gently. "The mirror does." The floor creaked. Shadows gathered in the corners. Dozens of figures began to step forward. Children, adults, men in waistcoats, women in dresses, all translucent as smoke. They circled her, whispering their names, one by one. "We are what the mirror remembers," Elise said, "and soon you'll be one of us." Nora stumbled back, heart racing. "I'm not staying here." "You already are," Elise said. "You stepped closer the first night. You answered when it called. Every time you look, it learns more of you." The room began to tilt, pulling her forward. Hands reached out from the walls. The mirror's surface pulsed like liquid. "Say it," Elise whispered. "Say you remember." Nora screamed and tore herself backward. She stumbled into the living room, falling to the floor. The mirror was normal again, just a piece of glass in a carved frame. But she was not alone. Her reflection didn't match her movements anymore. When she stood, the reflection stayed crouched. When she stepped left, it stepped toward her. Its eyes were darker, colder, and its lips curled into a smirk that wasn't hers. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm what you could have been," it replied, perfectly calm. "I'm the version of you that never turned away. I'm the part of you the mirror prefers." It lifted a hand and pressed it against the glass. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface. Not on her side, but inside the mirror. A second hand appeared, then a third, then a fourth. Dozens of hands, all pushing. The glass bulged outward like a balloon. Something was trying to crawl through. Nora grabbed a blanket and threw it over the mirror. The glass screamed, a high metallic shriek that made her teeth ache, and then went still. The room fell silent. Then, from beneath the blanket, a voice whispered, "You shouldn't have done that." The temperature in the room dropped. The lights flickered. And from the kitchen, 3 soft knocks echoed against the wall. Slow, deliberate, patient. The next night, Nora made a decision. She would destroy the mirror. Smash it, burn it, end it. But when she tried to lift it, it didn't move. The frame was suddenly too heavy, as if it had grown roots into the floor. When she swung a hammer, the metal bent. When she threw a chair, the wood bounced off harmlessly. The mirror wouldn't break. At 3:13 a.m., it opened again. Not a hallway this time, but a corridor. Endless, twisting, lined with mirrors on either side. In each reflection, she saw a different version of herself. Older, younger, happy, broken, married, alone, dead, alive. All of them watching her, all of them whispering. "Come home," they said in unison. "You don't belong there anymore." Something moved at the far end of the corridor. A tall, thin figure with no face. It was walking slowly toward her, its bare feet making no sound. With every step, the mirrors along the walls cracked and went black. "Do not go in," Nora whispered, remembering the rule. Teeing. But the figure was already stepping out. The figure stepped out of the mirror with the silence of smoke. It was tall and thin, its limbs too long, its movements too deliberate. Where its face should have been was a smooth, featureless plane, like polished bone. Yet despite the emptiness, Nora felt its eyes on her. It tilted its head, mirroring her breath, her heartbeat, the trembling of her hands. And then it spoke, with a voice, but with every voice the mirror had stolen. Nora, it said in 1,000 overlapping tones. Her mother, Elise, the reflection, herself. Do you remember? She backed away, heart hammering. What are you? It took another step forward, and the walls of her apartment melted away. The floor beneath her shifted into black. This is where time goes, the faceless thing said. Where every choice you didn't make lives forever. Where every memory you refuse to carry still exists. You look at us and call us ghosts, but we are you. Dozens, hundreds of reflections stared at her from the mirrors around them. Some sobbed, some smiled, some banged on the glass. All whispered the same thing. Let us out. The faceless thing extended a hand. Join us. It's easier here. No guilt, no choices, just memory. Nora hesitated. Part of her wanted to take that hand, to let it end, to stop fighting, to step into the reflection and never come back. Then she remembered Elise, and E.H., and all the names carved into that room. No, she whispered, I'm not yours. The corridor reacted. The mirrors around her shattered, spilling visions into the void. 1,000 lives she could have lived, 1,000 hers, swirled like ash in the air. Some screamed at her, others begged. One, older and broken, simply whispered, You already belong here. The faceless figure lunged, its hand stretching into a hooked claw. Nora ran, deeper into the corridor, past mirrors that showed her as a child, as an old woman, as someone she'd never become. Every step echoed with voices from the past. Every breath was stolen time. She turned a corner and stopped. There it was, the original mirror, taller than the rest, carved in the same ivy and mouth pattern. And standing before it was Elise Harrow. Not the child she'd seen, but a woman now, pale, timeless, trapped. You shouldn't have come, Elise said, her voice trembling. It doesn't let anyone leave. Then why are you still here? Because I never said it, Elise whispered. The words that end it, the ones it's afraid of. Nora swallowed. What words? Elise met her eyes. I remember. The corridor shook violently. The faceless thing roared, its voice now a storm of names and regrets. Don't you dare. Nora stepped toward the original mirror. It rippled like water, showing every terrible memory she'd tried to bury. Betrayals, failures, faces of people she'd hurt. It wasn't lying. It was all her. And it was waiting for her to deny it. Instead, she whispered, I remember. The glass screamed. The mirrors exploded outward, releasing the trapped souls inside. Figures poured into the corridor, hundreds of them, each whispering their names before dissolving into light. Elise grabbed Nora's hand. Now choose, she said. Step through or stay. Step through to where? Back, home, life. And if I stay, then you'll never feel pain again, never grow old, never regret. but you'll never be free. The faceless figure appeared again, but now its form was crumbling. You don't need freedom, it hissed. You need peace. Nora looked into the glass. It showed her everything. Her mother, her regrets, her first love, the stories she'd never written. A life imperfect and flawed. A life that still belonged to her. I want my life back, she said. She stepped through. Nora woke on the floor of her apartment. Morning light streamed through the window. The mirror stood against the wall, cracked now, its surface dull and lifeless. She crawled toward it and stared. Her reflection blinked back. Perfectly, instantly, and only once. It was hers again. The police would later find no trace of Lot 47 at the auction house. The Harrow estate records would vanish from the archives. Elise Harrow would remain a ghost story. But Nora knew the truth. The mirror hadn't been destroyed. It had simply let go. A week later, she packed the mirror into a crate, nailed it shut, and drove it to the deepest part of an abandoned quarry. She dropped it into the water without ceremony. It sank, slow and silent, into darkness. As she watched the ripples fade, she whispered the words one last time. I remember. Far below, in the dark, something knocked once, polite, patient, and waiting.